video because the news is finally out. I'm pregnant. I'm now in my second trimester, so I'm almost 14 weeks. I thought it would be really fun to do a little bit of a recap of trimester 1 for those that are interested in what it was like, what kind of symptoms that I had, and I did take a lot of notes so I can go through week by week and share. I will be doing a recap of trimester 2 as well. I will set it out a little bit differently. I've started filming some little vlog style videos, just picking up the camera whenever I've got a little update, and I'll just paste all of that footage together and share it with you in that form. I will do a whole nother video about preconception, things like supplements, and also morning sickness or nausea and vomiting, because that was one of my biggest symptoms, and I could talk for ages about that, what helped me, what triggered it, and I know that kind of info can really help other people, so I'll just film a whole nother separate video on it. So let's start at week 3, and this is quite early. This is the week after ovulation and in the lead up to when my period was due. Looking back, I didn't have a huge amount of symptoms that led me to believe that I was pregnant or that implantation had occurred. I had some slight symptoms that could have been put down to just premenstrual syndrome or PMS. So I had a little bit of breast tenderness, bloating, and the one that probably was a little bit irregular for me was nipple sensitivity. But during that trying to conceive process, I really tried not to read into too many of those symptoms. You gotta sit down. Oh, okay. I actually did a pregnancy test on the day before my period was due. I didn't expect it to come up as positive. I just kind of did it just to see if anything was going on or not. I had a few months previous to that, in the first month that we were trying, had a chemical pregnancy. So this is when you test positive in those early stages, but then, my period still came when it was due, or sometimes it can come a little bit after. So it is just like a really early pregnancy loss. So I'd already had that experience of doing pregnancy tests and seeing that really faint positive and getting really excited about it. But then as the days passed, the positive didn't get any stronger. And then my period came. So this time around, I did a test and I wasn't expecting anything much. The positive actually came up straight away. So that just got me so excited. I walked straight out of the bathroom and told Trent straight away. And we were both kind of a bit shocked because we hadn't seen a stronger pregnancy result just yet. So really exciting. On to week 4. So the embryo is about the size of a poppy seed. I really love to track the size because I just find that so interesting that you can have all of these symptoms and all these things going on in your body, and the embryo is so tiny at this stage. The day after I did my pregnancy test, the breast tenderness started to really ramp up a bit, more so than what I would generally get in just those premenstrual kind of syndrome period of time. And they started to grow in size from about weeks 5 to about 8.5 weeks. They just kept getting bigger and bigger. My bloating disappeared, which was a really good symptom for me to go away. I had really good digestion in those early stages, so I was so happy about that. Throughout that week, I did a couple more pregnancy tests just every couple of days because I had them in the cupboard, and I did enjoy seeing that that pregnancy line get stronger and stronger. So week 5. The embryo is now the size of a sesame seed. Breast tenderness was at its absolute peak at this point, really uncomfortable. I did one last pregnancy test and the positive came up so strongly on this one that it actually drew a little bit of the dye from the control line. That same day we actually went to the doctor and had my HCG levels tested, which is that pregnancy hormone. I also had the flu shot on this day. They recommend it to high risk people, and being pregnant, you are regarded as high risk. Following the flu shot, I did actually track that I had a headache for a couple of days, And now looking back, I can really just connect that with the flu shot. Nausea began halfway through week 5, so that's a little bit earlier than what I expected. It really did just start with like mild nausea. But then came week 6. Nausea really, really ramped up. I thought morning sickness would be just in the mornings and it would go away and the rest of the day you'd be feeling fine, but my nausea really did start in the morning as soon as my eyes opened and was there all day long until I was asleep. Basically, it was the only relief. A symptom that I experienced that I was not expecting and that I hadn't really heard many people talk about is the loss of appetite. For about a month, I had absolutely no appetite at all. I would have quite happily gone all day long without eating and not wanting to eat, except that was then a trigger for feeling more nauseous and vomiting. So this was a really tough one for me, and I found it really difficult because usually I like to share things that I'm eating or, tips to help other people eat well and work with my clients on these types of topics. And I wasn't really eating very much at all. I was feeling so unwell. It kind of felt like a lie to show up on social media and talk about that type of thing. So you may have noticed that I did really take a step back from social media because I didn't have a lot to share at that time. I didn't want to announce to everybody just yet that I was pregnant, but I wasn't eating, so I didn't have a lot to share with you. For me, the nausea did last until around that 11, 12 week mark. Now I'm 14 weeks and it's still every now and then I wake up feeling kind of a little bit off. Week 6 was a really fun week for me because the fatigue also set in, and I had a few girlfriends kind of prepare me for that, saying get ready for a new level of fatigue that you've not experienced. And it really was like that. Some days I would just find myself not being able to keep my eyes open. I wouldn't be able to get through the afternoon without a nap. I was still sleeping like 9 to 10 hours at night, but it just wasn't enough. So it was a crazy level of fatigue, and it makes total sense because your body is doing so much. Exercise. This was about the time that all exercise dropped off for me, and I really had to take the pressure off myself, have no expectations, and really just honor the amount of rest that my body needed. The one part of movement or exercise that I managed to keep really consistent was walking these 2. I think there was only a couple of occasions where I just couldn't manage. Otherwise, around a 30-minute walk, that was the only way I was getting my steps up. So I really tried to just keep consistent with that. So on to week 7. So halfway through that first trimester, and the embryo is now the size of a blueberry. This is when vomiting began for me. And looking back, I wasn't vomiting for a huge amount of time, but when it came on, it was like being violently ill, and it would come on very quickly. And the good thing about this was that I would actually feel a lot better than if I just wasn't vomiting that day and feeling nauseous. The days that I was vomiting, the nausea would kind of ease off a little bit for at least a couple of hours afterwards, so that was nice. When it came to work, I would have a little spew bowl next to my laptop, and thank God I didn't actually need to use it during any client calls, but it was on my mind that it was a possibility that it could happen at any time. Breast pain and tenderness definitely continued during week 7, and sleep was starting to become a little bit interrupted. So I was needing to go to the bathroom a lot and just waking up uncomfortable through the night. Week 8. This was an exciting one because we had the dating scan, and this is the first ultrasound and scan that we had done. The embryo is the size of a kidney bean, so you don't actually expect to see too much on the scan. You can't see like a little baby shape or anything, but what they're looking for is there an embryo in there? Is there a little heartbeat? What size is it? And then they confirm your due date. So that was really exciting for us. The whole scan was no more than 5 to 10 minutes, so it was quite a quick one. So then week 9, the embryo is the size of a green olive. I stopped tracking my symptoms around about this time in the apps. There wasn't a lot of change. I wasn't tracking my temperature or anything anymore. So I didn't keep track as well as I was. I remember these weeks because they weren't too far away now. The fatigue definitely continued, but I was getting a few hours here and there where I would feel good. And the negative to this was I would feel okay for a couple of hours, and in my mind that meant, okay, I've got to cram everything I need to do into these hours. And then in the afternoon and the evening, I would just crash and feel awful. So this was when I started to really learn that just because you're feeling good for a little bit of time doesn't mean that you need to overdo it. And week 10, the baby is the size of a cherry now. And this is when you can actually get the NIPT test done. So the NIPT test is the non-invasive prenatal testing, or you might have heard it called the Harmony test, which is just the American version. And this is where they test for chromosomal abnormalities through DNA, and they can also tell you the gender. We really wanted to find out the gender. We both just thought it would be a lovely way for us to really connect with what's going on, the little baby that's growing, because at the moment I can't feel anything and you can't really see what's going on. So we were super excited to find that out. I was really anxious about the test results for this. I remember going into the doctor and my heart was just like beating out of my chest. I was so nervous that we were going to be told that we were high risk, but thankfully our doctor said straight up we were low risk. She gave us the letter where she'd circled the gender because we just wanted to go and find out the gender on our own. So we got to the car and we opened our letter and found out it was a little girl. And if you don't find out through this kind of NIPT testing, which is all optional, it is really expensive as well. I think it costs about $450 to do that test. So if you opt not to do it, then you can still find out the gender, but not until 20 weeks when they do the scan then. Symptoms in week 10 was just some mild nausea still continuing and fatigue, but no vomiting that week. But moving on to week 11, the fetus is now the size of a fig. The vomiting did come back for a few days, but the nausea and fatigue was starting to improve. So I felt like there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and everyone had told me that the second trimester is where you really get all of your energy back and you start to feel really good. So I was definitely banking on that. And then that brings us to week 12. So the baby's now the size of a plum. We had the 12-week scan in the middle of this week, and this is the scan that everyone tells you is really fun. So you actually can see a baby's shape in the scan. You can see all the skull and the arms and the legs, and it's just really fun. Again, they're checking for heartbeat, they're checking all the organs, they're checking like little fat pocket at the back of the neck. They checked the brain, and our technician was really good at showing us all of these things. It was super interesting. She was wriggling around so much, which was really interesting because there's a bit of a disconnect between, you can see on the screen that there's a baby and it's moving, but I can't feel any of that just yet. And I don't think you feel any kind of movement from them until about 18 to 20 weeks. So yeah, that was really interesting. This scan was a lot longer, so this one went for around 30 minutes, and the tech was just measuring everything to make sure that she's growing as she should be. She did measure 1 day ahead of what her days were, so around about the right time, so everything was good. Some of the questions that I got about this first trimester was, did we tell anybody? And we did actually tell quite a few people during those early stages. It was tricky because we wanted to tell people when we saw them in person, so we kind of just slowly started telling people. A lot of my girlfriends knew that I was trying to conceive, so they would know when my period was due, when I was ovulating, and we would just have really open conversations about that type of thing. Another question was whether I was seeing any practitioners to help me fall pregnant, and I'll again cover this in more detail in another video, but I was seeing an acupuncturist who specialised in fertility before we started trying to conceive, because I was doing some preconception works, supplement-wise, health-wise. And then I've been seeing a chiropractor for years. So we just put a real emphasis on like pelvic stability, making sure everything was really strong so that when I was carrying a baby, I'd be in a really good position. So that was just a kind of change of focus. Somebody asked what kind of supplements I'm taking now, and I'm going to do another video because this one's getting a little bit long, just so I can cover it in more detail and talk about why I chose to take certain supplements. I might leave it there because I know I've been talking for quite some time. Comment below if you've got any questions, if you want me to cover anything in particular. I'll be posting that trimester 2 recap and a couple of other videos about different aspects. So definitely let me know if you want to know any more. But that's it for this video. I hope you really enjoyed just hearing a little recap about the first trimester. I loved watching these as I was going through those first couple of months. So yeah.